Joel Preston, thank you very much for joining me. Joel Preston goes by Mr. Kentucky 03 on Instagram.
Yes.
Joel, tell me a little bit about your background, your current age, and how long you've been lifting.
I'm 61 years old. I've been training since about 1974. I was about 13 when I started, though. And so I've always trained my whole life, never took any extended layoffs. It has always been an upward trajectory. You know, there's been plenty of ups and downs over the years, but I've never not trained. It's always just been a part of who I am.
And when did training become serious for you?
By the time I got to high school, I played high school sports, but I was more interested in lifting than I was playing football. I've told people in the past, I played football because I lifted. I didn't lift because I played football.
Right.
So it was the other way around with me. So I was able to play because I was stronger, especially in the 70s. There wasn't that many people lifting. When I hit a 300-pound bench press at about 17 years old, there wasn't anybody else who could do that.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
So I was like way ahead of everybody else. That gives me a good advantage considering I wasn't that great an athlete.
Good training will definitely get you there, but that's very impressive at that age. When did you actually start official bodybuilding and competition?
I was so interested in bodybuilding throughout the 70s, throughout my high school years. I competed my first bodybuilding contest when I was 20 years old in 1981, nice. And I played third in the Mr. Tri-State.
Okay.
Pretty regularly all the way up through the 80s. In 1984, I won my first contest. And in 1991, I won the AAU Mr. Kentucky title, which at the time was one of the most prestigious titles in the state. The AAU Mr. America was like the pinnacle of bodybuilding back in its day. And then a few years later, I started competing in NPC shows. Throughout my 40s, I actually had my best competitive years then. In 2003, I won the overall open division at the NPC Kentucky Championships. So that's where I get my handle from, Mr. Kentucky 03.
Yeah, very nice. I get that now. Okay. Well, all impressive. Kudos to you. And I appreciate you sharing that picture that you sent, 46 years old, incredible physique. Okay. When did you stop competing?
I competed in my last competition in 2013. I was 52 years old. I got in really good condition my last year. I won a show and I placed second. There was a big competition in Kentucky Muscle, and I was never able to win that one. I placed second in it 3 times. And so it was my last edition, and I got second place again. So I was like, well, I was still happy with my condition. It was probably arguably my most ripped condition I'd ever gotten in that year at 52. So I've been for over 30 years in bodybuilding. So I've had enough of that. It's too much dieting. If I had it to do over, I eat as often. You can't stay in a calorie deficit all the time and expect to make the muscle gains that you want to get. In my 20s, when I should have been eating and training to get bigger, I would compete every 6 months. So I was always in a calorie deficit. I wouldn't advise anybody to do that. I think there's so much more information available now, online coaching. We didn't have that back then. You were just on your own. And the community I live in, I was probably the only person competing anyway. So, whatever I could get from the magazines was basically it. So,
since you've been doing this for so long, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to tap into your vast experience and knowledge. My goal is to give younger lifters the experience and knowledge they need to continue doing this successfully throughout their lives. So what are your best tips for someone who's thinking ahead?
Be persistent over time. Don't expect to get a lot of gains in the short term. Think of the year ahead. And just be persistent with your training. Like I said, there's so many more avenues you can go through online training now. If I'd had that available when I was younger, I could have saved myself a lot of years and a lot of injuries that I incurred over the years.
Right.
Don't try to do too heavy all the time.
Right.
We tend to want to do that. It's okay to go heavy. Technique is more important than how heavy you're going.
That's one of the main points I'm making in this video. If I've seen another human do something, I know that I should also be capable, right? Because we all put our pants on the same way. But at the same time, we don't know that person's history. We all have a different path. Lift within your own limitations. And I think you can be more successful if you keep that reality for yourself. Keep it consistent without trying to get too overzealous.
Yes. I've never followed a specific powerlifting style programming in my life. I don't train as a bodybuilder, which bodybuilders don't really train smart. They just go in and see how much they can do every week. So this was the first time I was ever on a regimented program. And in my late 50s, right before I turned 60 years old, I've been following 531 for a couple of years, and I got the strongest on deadlifts I'd ever been in my life. I hit 10 reps with 500 and a single with 600 right before I turned 60 years old. When I was bodybuilding, the most I'd ever done was 455 for sets of 6. So there's a lot to be said for training smart, rather than just going in and trying to see how much you can do every single week you train.
And what tips do you have towards staying healthy?
Don't get injured. It just goes back to what we've been saying. Train smart. Perfect technique, as perfect as you can make it. I watch videos religiously nowadays because as you get older, it becomes really important to you to not get. When you're younger, you're so resilient and you think you can't get hurt until you do. And then once you do, then you realize you're not bulletproof.
And there's nothing wrong with backing off a little bit if you feel you're not 100%. There's no shame in that. That's a smart way to lift rather than saying, you know what, I'm going to overlook this bit of soreness or this awkwardness or this pain and just go for it, because you and I know lifting for years, that's the wrong thing to do.
Yes, absolutely. Diet, I wouldn't recommend anybody to try this. It's not sustainable to be ripped. Get to a comfortable body weight. You're not fat, but you're not going to walk around in a calorie deficit all the time. If you do, you're not going to make any progress in your workouts. You have to eat enough food, but we don't want to get fat either.
Exactly.
A bodybuilder or a lifter will say, well, I'm bulking up. No, you're not. You're just getting fat.
Yeah, exactly.
But it works both ways. I've got really strong. Gaining a lot of weight will make you stronger, but then you take your shirt off and you look yourself in the bathroom and you're like, oh man.
Your strength is ridiculously impressive.
Well, thank you. Yes, I think there's a middle ground. Be fairly lean, comfortably lean, and maybe see some abs, but they don't have to be onion skin, paper thin. That's not sustainable unless you really are a genetic. I've known people who are so genetically gifted, they just stay lean no matter. But most of us aren't like that.
Yeah.
Most to be that lean, you're going to have to suffer, and you've only got so much willpower.
That's right.
You're not going to do it indefinitely.
That's a good point, because I feel like there is definitely a fine line between having good nutritional habits that you can maintain regularly and the other side of it, which is like literally suffering because you are limiting yourself to the point where you're miserable.
Yes. When I was training for competitions, I would get up in the morning and I would be starving, and I would eat a dozen egg whites. And an hour later, you were starving again. So all you were ever doing was thinking about food. It's not fun.
Would you then pig out after a competition?
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
When I was younger, especially in my 20s, I've gained 20 pounds in a week after a show. That's not healthy. It's a form, looking back on it, it's really an eating disorder when you think of it. It's no different because you're starving for a period of months, and then after you go out of control and undo everything that you worked so long to get. And it don't take as long to get fat as it does to get, it takes a lot longer to get lean than it does to get off. And so I'm not saying not to compete in bodybuilding, but there's different ways of approaching it.
Yeah. To characterize it as an eating disorder is probably a very good characterization, because you're really like shocking your body for periods of a time, then shocking it when you pig out, and then shocking it again to go back, right? So your body doesn't know what's going on with this roller coaster ride.
There are so many better, there's coaches out there, Lane Norton, Mike Israetel. There are a number of different avenues you can go through now and avoid a lot of the pitfalls of starving and binging. That's never good.
All right. Since you have the experience of both bodybuilding and powerlifting, do you have a favorite at this point? And what are you most impressed with, strength or the physique?
I like a mix of both. I've always, my whole life, wanted to have a physique and be as strong as I look.
Right.
If that makes sense. I never wanted to have a large muscular physique and not be able to perform as well.
Right.
So actually, I would say equally both.
Yep.
You might not be the strongest you can be or as ripped as you can be, but for most people, I think that's what most people want, is to be functional.
I agree. And like you, I like both. I like to have the strength while still being in relatively good shape. Maybe not ripped, but still, slim and
Yes,
fit.
you can go through periods. If you want to be a little leaner for the summer, you can diet a little extra, lose that extra pounds for a little while. Keep it sensible though.
This is great. Couldn't tell you how happy I am to have your expertise for this video, because I think this is good knowledge. And I'd like to have viewers think about training smartly and their safety for the long run, because
Yes,
there's no reason for younger people to make the same mistakes we've made.
right, exactly. Considering we have the internet, we have all this information available now, so they
Right.
can save a lot of time.
All right, Joel, I thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you, Marcus.
All right, Aaron White from White Box Dubai is here. Appreciate your time. And I wanted to get your take on some of your tips and strategies for the longevity that you've had with lifting. You've moved from CrossFit to powerlifting, which is a really nice perspective to include. What's your secret? And, if you had to narrow it down to 2 or 3 of your top tips, what would they be?
Yeah, thanks, Marcus. So I'm very grateful to CrossFit for introducing me to the barbell. The fundamentals of pressing and squatting and deadlifting I'd learned in CrossFit. And I also learned that there's some of those other CrossFit movements that weren't kind to old shoulders or older knees. And it was around the same time I met my powerlifting coach, Patrick, who is a similar age as well. So he carries old war injuries from various younger days in sports careers. Like myself, I was an ex-rugby player as well. I've got some seriously jacked up left shoulder, dislocated it at least twice, had surgery to stabilize it, and all sorts of lower back and knee issues from sports. So I think the key thing, well, a couple of key things I've learned to be able to increase strength and to continue lifting, and something that I see a huge amount of longevity in, is the ability to just take my time about what I'm doing. I'm not in a rush. I'm training at home. I make sure I've got really good warm-up done. So working on the areas that I know need a little bit of extra care and attention, making sure my back's loose, ensuring that my abductors in particular are worked on, that I get good blood flow through my shoulders before I do anything. And then just taking each set as it comes, right? And just listening to my body a lot. So we will typically work in RPE levels, rating of perceived exertion, or reps in reserve, depending on what type of methodology you're using. And we like to be working in the range from 5 to 8, typically, for sets, depending on loads, from doubles to sets of 8. And it's important that I really listen to where I am during the course of working sets. So if I feel I don't have that last set, okay, today I don't have that last set. If I feel maybe there's an extra couple of kilos there in a working set, okay, let's load up. And rather than being very regimented in, okay, I'm going to now do 5x5 at 100 kilos, maybe today I'm going to do 4x5 at 90. And that's what is good for me that day. And so long as, when we look at the long, we've got a couple of years of metrics and data, that we're going in the right trend, we pretty much know where my maxes are, that we're working in that 70-80% range, and there's a lot of science. And each week I check in with my coach. This is what's affecting me. And you'll notice on this side there's a big collection of specialty bars, and they're not just for decoration, right? As you get older and you have some limitations, or you pick up some niggles, then maybe the safety squat bar is what we need to use just to get that squat motion going and protect the shoulders and elbows. Or we need to press in a straight line, so we'd use a football bar or something like this. Or we'd use, for instance, the open trap bar to get some deadlifts in. We use these tools a lot, depending on where I have issues, right? So I've struggled a lot with tennis elbow or tendonitis in my elbows. So we went from a straight bar pressing into football bar pressing. That helps a lot. And at the same time, switched over to the safety squat bar to reduce the tension on the elbows during squats. And it takes time, right? So long as you're moving and you've got load on the muscles, your body's going to respond, and you've got that muscle memory from training a lot as well. So the other thing I've been working into my routines now over the last few months is just to get a bit more cool down in on the bike, just to ensure good flush through the body of blood. I'm not trying to set any world records on cardio, but plus I'm getting 10, 15 minutes in after each session. Again, how hard I go depends on what I've been doing earlier in the day. And also, as I get a bit older as well, I'm pretty much focused on one compound lift per workout. So yes, I may do some accessories, I may do some biking, some warm-up, but I'll go and hit bench 5x5, whatever it is, and then that'll be that top set for the day. But I then like to work out 3 days on, so squat, bench, deadlift day by day, 1 day off, then again 3 times. So working out 6 times a week, but for shorter sessions, so typically under an hour. And it helps with family life as a father of young twins. So a bit of a long response, Marcus, but hopefully that gives you a good idea of what I'm doing and how I'm looking after myself.
Yeah, that's great. And I do appreciate that because that's one thing to consider, the split that we all train with, how many days a week we're in the gym. I used to do a similar split. So it's an interesting idea that you brought up because that's an important factor in how we prolong our lifting days. What has it done to you to change your strategy for lifting and taking care of yourself? Does that also mean certain nutritional considerations or limiting certain movements and just staying away from certain movements?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I know that my shoulder and lower back are issues that I'm going to be having for a long time. Although through the use of strength training, I've got much better flexibility now, much better strength around those injuries. And actually, what I find is when I have an enforced layoff, I'm sick, traveling a lot, that's when I really start to feel things breaking down again. So my secret sauce is keep lifting, and that seems to keep things in a good shape. Now, also as getting a bit older as well, need to watch some of the things that I'm eating. So certainly trying to keep the uric acid down through not eating any shellfish really at all, and some leaner white meats as opposed to too much red meats. And I don't drink either, so that helps as well. Because when I do indulge too much, I'm not 20 anymore, right? And I got to pay a price for that. So trying to stay away from that, just making sure to get some plenty good calories in, because if I'm going hard on a session, tough hour and a half, it's easily an easy 1,000 calories plus. And then the humidity in Dubai, gosh, I can easily lose 2 kilos of sweat in a session. So I also know in the summer months here, I have to be really careful about my hydration. So constantly drinking throughout the day. Otherwise, man, you get the worst headache, right? A dehydration headache and loss of concentration. So I've got a desk job, right? I'm on Zoom plenty of the time for work. I got to make sure that I do keep moving through the day, that I don't sit on my hamstrings all day long. And starting now, so I need to really look after my hips as well. So once you have knee, ankle issues, it's all connected together. So I notice the hips are now the thing that I need to keep good mobility into. So, before I started any of this CrossFit or powerlifting, no way could I touch my toes. I can almost get my hands flat on the floor, which, I'm a bigger guy. So I was surprised the other day when I want to bend down. So something good's happening. Still got some reasonable power. Not like Brandon, though, but I can always keep trying, right?
Yeah, all good points, especially keep moving. Because I feel like as we get older, once we do take time off, things will start to revert back to the old age syndrome pretty quickly. I try not to test more than like twice a year because I don't want to exert unnecessary stress and strain on my body. I just want to be able to train consistently, and testing yourself all the time and going all out, training to failure is something that isn't necessary for good health anyway, if that's your goal.
Yeah. Yeah, I fully agree with you, Marcus. I'm testing maximum twice a year.
Right.
Sometimes once a year is fine. It's only small increments as you start to reach a plateau of strength without dramatically changing other factors around yourself. I always take away that I'd rather be lifting tomorrow than setting a PB today.
That's a good mantra to have, that's for sure. You mentioned sleep. How important is that to you, to your recovery and your training?
Yeah, really, really important. Well, about a year or so ago, we invested in 8 Sleep, which is a cooling/heating solution for the mattress. It learns how your sleep patterns are and provides sleep data back. So I know if I'm going to bed at the right time, I'm getting my 6-7 hours in, and the quality of that sleep, it gives me a score. I felt that that's helped give me much deeper sleep when it's been a bit colder, because your body typically needs to work a little harder and exert more calories, which means you sleep a little bit better. So I don't know if it's like some placebo, but it feels great. And that has made a big difference in my overall quality of sleep, and also tracking it with the data that it provides on the app.
How many hours of sleep do you target?
A target anywhere between 6 and 7. So going to bed about 11, waking up around 6 is pretty much when my twins wake up. I don't typically like to be up much more than that. And certainly, I have this thing right at work. If we have a late night at work, I tell the team, nothing good ever happens on a school night after 10 p.m. So I'll bid you farewell.
Yeah, I think it's important. I get probably on average 7 hours myself. So for me, the sleep is definitely important. 7 or more, if I can, is definitely my target.
Yeah, absolutely. And it has so many other benefits, good sleep in terms of just rebuilding the body and your brain function and everything else you do. So my friends tell me they're not sleeping much, and I'm asking them to fix that as our number one priority. If you're not getting that 6, 7, 8 hours on a consistent basis, you pay for it somewhere else, right? There's
Oh
no
yeah,
two ways about
without question. And one thing that a lot of people forget is that the sleep plays a huge role in testosterone levels for us. If we're not getting enough sleep, that will affect the testosterone levels, which will in play, affect our training and our
it. Yeah,
lifting ability. So there is a direct correlation there, not just for the energy reserves, but it's an important factor, especially as we get older.
yeah,
All right,
definitely.
so last question I'll ask is regarding the switch from CrossFit to power lifting. What was your rationale for switching? Did it have anything to do with health or injuries?
It got to a point where I couldn't lay on either shoulder at night because they were so sore from overhead pressing or pull-ups or whatever it was. And I was like, this is no way. But I did hugely enjoy the barbell side of it. And it was a very clear choice to shift over to doing something that I enjoy. And the guys were like, well, Aaron, you just do those three movements. Well, actually, there's a huge amount that goes around it that I discovered, and we call it accessories movements. And having a coach who understood that I was older, I had limitations, I had injuries, there was only so hard I could train, was immeasurably valuable. And I enjoyed the CrossFit days. I did all my certifications and all this type of thing. But one thing it did teach me was the ability to turn up and to be present and put everything you had into that workout and, feel good about it afterwards. And I've taken that mindset into my lifting as well, because if you have a look at some of my Instagram, when the weights are getting heavy and it's getting close to meet time, I'm turning up that intensity, and that intensity came from CrossFit and to an extent my rugby playing days as well. I have no regrets about anything that happened in the past. Hope to be lifting well into 60s, 70s, hence the investment here
Yeah.
that I hope will last for a long time. And I've had a home gym now for 8, 9 years, and it's gone through numerous iterations. My wife uses it. The girls love being in there. It's part of the family routine that we have, and long may it continue.
Yeah, kudos. But yeah, you were ahead of the curve before the whole pandemic. You had your setup already going, which is nice.
Yeah, I blame Brandon. I was watching his videos till my eyes were bleeding for any hints and tips, and is it really worth a spend? And clearly it is.
Right. Yeah. No, he's provided a lot of valuable information to all of us. Can't thank him enough. But also, I can't thank you enough for your time. I definitely appreciate you sharing your knowledge and experience because it's valuable. So thank you for your time, Aaron. I really appreciate
Pleasure.
it. All
My
the
pleasure,
best to you and
Marcus.
the family.
Yeah, likewise. Take care.
Welcome, Brandon. How's it going?
Hey, Marcus. Good. Thanks for having me again. Appreciate it.
Most of my viewers for the channel are 25 to 35. So
Sure.
for those individuals, what kind of tips and strategies can we offer them to sustain longevity with their training? What has been your secret?
I think obviously with training, the number one key to anything is consistency, right? So as long as you're training and you're doing it consistently, you'll see results. But that keyword is consistently, because I think something that can creep up to people, and I think most people have the mindset that probably as they get older, injuries are going to be more prone.